An expelled elder of the universe, the Overmaster sought those whose treatment in society was somewhere between hellish and decent. Who else would have such a harsh view of society? The Cadre would then abduct those responsible for societal ills for a trial. Overmaster was the judge. Once judgment was declared, a world might experience either crippling punishment or total annihilation. In 1984, the alien hero known as Starman expelled the Overmaster from Earth. The Cadre was rendered to various military and research contractors. And on what was Earth being judged? Poverty, technological stagnation for profit, genocide, ancient superstitions, corporate greed, political cowardice, environmental damage, and commodification of individual human life. And what did humanity learn from being on the brink of planetary annihilation? Nothing. Nothing whatsoever. Eons ago, with raindrop tears, Mother Nature scattered her beloved elemental spirits to safety across the multiverse, to save them from a force of uncreation. The last lightning spirit, Ulthun. Afterward, Mother Nature hid in the various nature realms in the multiverse. Ulthun pursued her and her children. Unbeknownst to either of them, 4 elementals were about to be freed. Long ago, Morgan Le Fay forged talismans to entrap the 4 elementals. When her toxic romance with Diablo ended, the talismans changed hands. In 1948, Taru, the despot of the Chongmai petty state, weaponized the talismans to imprison his detractors. When Brunhilde was exiled from Asgard to Earth too, she fell to Chongmai and was imprisoned. Smashing and slashing the prisoner's way to freedom, Valkyrie shattered the talismans, freeing the elementals. Taru was thrown to his disgruntled subjects. Afterward, the elementals searched in vain for their mother only to be exploited by Diablo. During a time travel scenario, the Terrifics battled the elementals before convincing them of being fooled by the immoral alchemist. Saddened by nature's decay over the centuries, the 4 sought to protect what was left. Naive, they knew not where or how to ethically reverse the spoiling of the Earth. Magnum, Zephyr, Hydron, and Hellfire opted to binary bond with human hosts. Maria Rambo was a dressmaker born and raised in New Orleans. Her husband, Frank, was a fireman. A pulp sci-fi fan, Maria often dreamt of new worlds she could explore, not as a woman or as a black woman, but as a human being. Fleeing the racial tensions during the post-war recession, the Rambos relocated to Seaboard City, where Maria traded alterations for pilot lessons. Eventually, she became a crop duster. During this time, she gave birth to a daughter, Monica. It was during the Stag chemical fire that both Rambos were called upon. While Frank's fire company rescued workers, Maria dropped water onto the blaze. It was then an explosion shrugged Maria's plane, setting the wings ablaze. Then, just as suddenly, the fire seemingly dissipated. Crash landing and trapped under the wreckage, Maria was moments from a fuel tank explosion when Hellfire dissipated the flames and Binary bonded with her. Tragically, Frank died in the explosion, leaving Maria to raise Monica alone. Despite the heartbreak, Maria fulfilled her sci-fi dreams as Binary. 1986. A young woman wanders the urban decay that litters the decade. A refugee of Strata, a subterranean society, Atli possessed a mutation that enabled survival on the surface. She sought out a rare ore that had been plundered from her homeland. Quixium. Atli had been a cheery person until Stag Industries plundered her homeland and massacred her people. Living on the streets, Atli gave up hope of ever avenging her people. That was when Magnum, who had befriended the Stratan in times past, Binary bonded with her. Empowered with geokinesis, Atli became the eco-activist known as Terra. 1993. Lei Ling was the founder of China's best architectural firm, Sacred Tree Design. Having built entire cities, Lei Ling was endeared by her mentor, Madame Huang. However, when China's poor air quality led to Huang's lung cancer, Lei Ling petitioned for healthier air quality. Labeled an enemy of the state, Lei Ling was arrested. During her confinement, Zephyr breezed into her cell and binary bonded with her. Escaping in a whirlwind wrath, Lei Ling began to attack polluters as Aero. 1994. Pearl Pangan lived in Cebu City, where she indulged her love of water. Employed by Alontech for deep-sea exploration, Pearl discovered a nexus point through which Surtur dispatched expeditionary minions. Attacked, Pearl began to descend into bone-crushing depths. That was when Hydron found her and binary bonded with her. Utilizing her newly granted hydrokinesis, Pearl was recruited into Triumph Division, tasked with protecting the Philippines from threats most fantastical. From then on, she was the Wave. In 1995, Ulthun returned. The world's electronics were rendered useless by a planetary EMP. A shift in the poles was about to occur when these four heroines confronted Ulthun. Awakening hidden talents, such as control over nuclear, organic, gaseous, and temperature states, Ulthun was imprisoned and thrown onto a barren asteroid. Afterward, the four heroines resolved to avenge the Earth. Their message: Mother Nature has had enough of your shit. 1973. The Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries imposed an embargo against the United States in retaliation for resupplying the Israeli military. The American economy grinds to a near halt. 1978. The Carter administration signs into law the National Energy Act. Included in that legislation was Project Potential Energy Group, Alternate Sources, United States, or Project P.E.G.A.S.U.S. So pretty easy, right? Just sign a contract and spend taxpayer money, huh? Well, no. Project director Mark Grunwald assembled a team every bit as eclectic and exotic as the energy sources that were to be studied. Adam Brashear was once the Azure Avenger known as the Blue Marvel. Due to racist practices, Adam, the most brilliant man in the world, was reduced to fetching coffee for his white counterparts. That was until an accident occurred while opening an artificial nexus point. When President Kennedy attended the nexus point demonstration, a force field failed. The parasitic energy that emanated clung to both Adam and his friend, white janitor Connor Sims. While Sims was rendered unconscious, Adam observed himself being attuned to antimatter. Enveloped in a blinding blue glow, he rescued the president from the expanding nexus point. Afterward, he became the Blue Marvel. Years later, Connor, angry over how people treated him for his below-average IQ, began to develop the same powers. Lashing out at a bigoted world, he became the Anti-Man and battled Blue Marvel for the fate of Washington, D.C. During the battle, Sims seemingly dissipated in a matter-antimatter reaction. Blue Marvel survived, but when bystanders offered him aid, they were repulsed at his exposed dark skin. President Kennedy, concerned with chances for successful civil rights legislation, begged Adam to retire the Blue Marvel. And so, with humiliation and nobility, Adam did. Ted Knight was a pulp sci-fi fan since boyhood. Bullied for both his hobby and his intelligence, he developed panic attacks and PTSD. As a meteoriticist, Ted researched curious meteorites found in the Atlas Mountains, the Nile Valley, Spain, and elsewhere. He experimented on the most plentiful samples. Unbeknownst to him, those samples were Sentio Metallico, nth metal, and vibranium. When mixed, the alloy reacted to thoughts of gravity, electromagnetism, vibrations, and impact absorption. It was then Ted crafted a rod and a star-pointed UFO to become Opal City's resident hero, Starman. Monica Rambeau was a former Seaboard City policewoman turned investigator. Her task was to keep Project P.E.G.A.S.U.S top secret. When an expedition outside Reality 616 antagonized the man on the wall, Monica was bathed in the white light of the Light Force dimension. Attuned to the electromagnetic spectrum, Monica took the codename Captain Marvel. Wendell Vaughn was drafted into the latter days of Vietnam. He was generally regarded as lacking the killer instinct for war. After the war, he joined NASA and was selected for Project Quantum, a forerunner to Project Starjump. The project was a manned mission to the edge of the solar system and back within a human lifetime, all courtesy of Yucca metal propulsion. Vaughn launched into the history books only to crash on Uranus, courtesy of Yucca metal ripping itself loose of the craft. Fortunately, The native Uranians took pity on him like they did to the Graysons. However, despite the Uranians' advanced knowledge, they lacked Yucca to replace the propulsion. It was then Mentor, an elder of the universe, gifted the soft-hearted Wendell with the quantum bands. The elder explained the ancient Kree bands were wielded by such heroes as Glakanda, and for a time, by Robert Grayson. Wendell just wanted to get home. Mentor explained that home was in exchange for protecting the universe. Desperate, Wendell agreed. Recruited by Project Pegasus, Quasar became an expeditionary consultant. Michael Harper was the crime-busting hero known as the Golden Guardian. The Newsboy Legion had played a role in his superhero origin, and so entrusted him with security for Project Pegasus. And then there was Gold Lantern. Naomi McDuffie was empowered by the bright light of justice in an otherwise unjust dark age. Returning to Oa, Naomi vanquished Kalalor and re-empowered the Elders. She also learned why the Lantern reignited on Earth. Upon returning to Earth, Blue Marvel offered her a position as a consultant with Project Pegasus. Other personnel included director Mark Gruenwald, Evelyn Necker, Faith Burrows, Jerome Ntuba, Kyle Nimbus, and dozens more. Once, a New Genesian, Lona, wandered through a nexus point into Project Pegasus, where his spooked steed rampaged. The new god was eluding the Apocalyptian called Devolance the Pursuer. During the mayhem, Devolance flayed Lonar's mother box, Kobik. Fortunately, Starman deduced the mother box was alive and required a casing to survive. Swiftly, he grafted a creation metal called X-Element to patch Kobik's wounds. The addition of X-Element enabled Kobik to morph into a human form and verbally communicate. The project findings would have changed energy, medicine, computing, and economics. While the Carter administration applauded such progress, the subsequent Reagan administration condemned it. Rather than shutter the project and commercialize and weaponize the research, Reagan obeyed advice to eradicate all data and materials. And who whispered such advice into the president's ear? Why, televangelist Glorious Godfrey, of course. PrOTARis. A factory world programmed eons ago to produce machine life. Why? No one knows. The machines were born with never-ending curiosity, and nothing inspired more curiosity than creation. Unable to know the purpose of their creation, the PrOTAR explored the cosmos and lent a hand in the creation of medicines, infrastructure, agriculture, technology, and even social relations. A sect followed its curiosity to its logical aim, creation of life. The PrOTAR created a variety of rudimentary and sentient life forms. However, the final goal was to create sapient life to continue their legacy. On Srenesk, the X3Z model was created to populate the planet. The newly created populace tinkered with its design to create a supermodel, Omega. He was an entity built for warfare. The pacifistic PrOTAR abhorred such an evolution. Omega mass-produced copies. The PrOTAR convened for an unconscionable choice. And so, in sorrowful duty, the PrOTAR did. Omega hid his favorite duplicate on Earth. That duplicate was James Michael Starling. When last we left JMS, he had newly arrived on Danny the Street in Midway City. There, he managed Gramps' comic shop frequented by his neighbor Dorothy Spinner. Speaking of residency, James Michael was nurtured by Amber and Ruth. The PrOTAR arrived on Danny the Street to euthanize the boy when Omega appeared to confront them. The Doom Patrol attempted to separate the feuding sides. The ensuing mayhem ended when the PrOTAR noticed the Street attempting to communicate. The PrOTAR then related the numerous times the X3Z models had to be euthanized due to adopting a lethal protector personality. It was then James Michael approached Omega and fell to his knees. He begged the fellow X3Z to cease hostility. Omega refused and barreled through the Doom Patrol toward the PrOTAR. The machine men appeared to euthanize Omega with a genetic kill switch. Surprisingly, the lethal protector dropped dormant rather than dead. Why? James Michael's sacrificial gesture confused them. The boy sat with them and then spoke of a concept called nurture over nature. Emanating from deep, deep space, no one knows their origins. They are the Psions. They combed the Vega system, extracting geological, technological, and organic samples for their fanatically ideological approach to science. However, they eschewed militarization and commercialization until annexed by the Citadel. When Harry Hokum conned his way into the Citadel confidence, the Psions were ordered to create a state-sponsored deity. Based on the mythical Phoenix Flamebird, Zal began as a random Okaran girl who survived the genetic engineering and brainwashing to inhumanely create her. And what is the word of Zal? To protect power is to protect yourself. An elite holy order enforces Zal's teachings, the warlords of Okara. Recently, a heretical faction of Psions, the genetically and hypertime-altered visionaries, have escaped the Citadel. Their calling? To save the one world that is the linchpin of the future, Earth. In a solar system of 15 worlds orbits Pytharia. Centuries ago, a humble Samaritan was seeking knowledge to better this world. When he unlocked a nexus point, a predator from the dark multiverse marked him, deforming his hand into a claw-like shape. The deformity was inherited by his male descendants. The most heroic was Vulcan, known as the Claw. It was he who was chosen by the gods of the Elder Light to battle the shadow gods of the dark multiverse. He was gifted the sword called Moonthorn, and the crimson gauntlet forged from Oraculum, known to us as Nth Metal, to temper his shadow god heritage. Claw and his allies banished the shadow gods and sealed the nexus point. However, centuries later, they returned. Anti-science zealots cast a spell to reopen the nexus point and summoned the Yorg from the dark multiverse to their cause. Pro-science zealots crafted an artificial nexus and allied with the Yorg's enemies, the P.E.G.A.S.U. Noticing the plenty all around them, the two factions joined forces to enslave Pytharia. 400 years later, Sukaroth, a P.E.G.A.S warlord, indoctrinated a slave woman into what he assumed was total obedience. Due to her exotic look, he opted to marry her into his harem. Afraid, the girl fled into the wilds, uneducated and naive of the dangers beyond. When ambushed by highwaymen, she was rescued by a swashbuckling priest named Dagon. He named her Starfire and taught her to survive and to assert. In case you're wondering, nothing inappropriate happened. If you know, you know. Anyway, while hunting one day, Starfire returned to camp to find Dagon had been taken by Sukaroth's patrolmen. She snuck back into the P.E.G.A.S fortress the way she had snuck out long ago. However, she was too late. Dagon had been tortured to death. Freeing the slaves, Starfire slaughtered Sukaroth. The P.E.G.A.S and Yorg allied with a sorceress named Lady Jin to pacify the ensuing rebellion. However, it was Lady Jin who discovered that Starfire was a female descendant of Claw, one who had escaped her purging. The heroine was a descendant of the very shadow gods, worshipped by the P.E.G.A.S and Yorg. So, the allied horrors laid down their arms. Starfire then expelled the P.E.G.A.S and Yorg from her world. What became of Pytharia afterward faded into myth and legend.
Life should not be a journey to the grave with the intention of arriving safely in a pretty and well-preserved body. 1965. Route 66. My name is Snapper Carr. I'm what you call a gonzo journalist. My investigation has uncovered a war between creation and destruction, with humanity as collateral damage. The Indigo children covet the Nightwing. The cult of the Crimson Flame desires the Flamebird. When you're gonzo, you got nothing. No publisher, no willing sources, no credibility. You rely on any weirdos who'll talk to you, like Clay Stoner, the odd man. Think of him as the love child of Ayn Rand and Lewis Carroll, or Brother Power, a living dressmaker dummy animated by the zeitgeist. If the counterculture is Oz, then he's the Scarecrow, and Raven Wingfoot and Benita Juarez, the respective avatars of the Nightwing and Flamebird. Raven is an artist inspired by romantic whispers in the night, and Benita is her Firebird, whose prayers are whispered for forgiveness. And so onward we drive, to keep two cults from outracing one another to the end of the road. Life should not be a journey to the grave with the intention of arriving safely in a pretty and well-preserved body, but rather to skid in broadside in a cloud of smoke, thoroughly used up, totally worn out, and loudly proclaiming, "Wow, what a ride."
Ran, an Earth displaced in hypertime, an ecological nightmare. The planet screams in agony, calling out for a hero. And a hero answered. Or so Ran thought. Dr. Adam Strange was the director of Canada's Zeta project. Following the Apocalypse War, Canada found itself humiliated. To protect his nation, Strange reverse-engineered apocalyptian propulsion into the Zeta beam. Recovering data secreted from the World Army, Canada ordered expeditions to extract extraterrestrial technology to empower Canada. Strange led an expedition to Alpha Centauri. However, while his team landed on Centauri 4, he landed on Ran. Interrupting a civil war, Strange allied with Sardath, an anti-fascist whose terraforming plan had been suppressed. Sensing opportunity, Strange proposed a pact with Sardath, repairs to his Zeta tech in exchange for technological knowledge. Sardath agreed and even proposed that Strange marry his daughter, Alana. With his Zeta tech repaired, Adam extricated his expedition from a barrage of Yaka arrows on Centauri. The fascistic forces of Vulcan were defeated, and Ran signed a mutual defense treaty with Canada. Afterward, Strange rigged the Zeta beam to traverse the multiverse. This enabled Canada to ally with Canadas in other universes. And who handles the expeditions when Adam is teaching Alana how to Netflix and chill? Why, that would be Wesley Dodds, of course. Quad, the negative zone. The Tyanans, in their quest to overthrow Mobius, seeded various species. The most successful was the Arthrosians. To extend their reach, the Arthrosians seeded infantry throughout the Kirby Belt. Reaching 616, parasitic infantry were disguised as vanities to lure and assimilate hosts. Nest worlds were colonized. Empires were devoured. However, over the centuries, a firmer grasp proved elusive thanks to the Novacore, the Raptors, and the Cometites. Recently, 2 Bronze Age vanities, a blue and a scarlet scarab, awakened to respectively assimilate Jaime Reyes and Mehmet Faul.